Welcome to the Belly Dance Stories podcast, a multimedia production directed by Alexandra and Valerick.
You will hear inspiring conversations and learn about the ways belly dance has become a powerful channel of transformation in people's lives. Hello. We are here. Let me do this.
Yeah, I forgot about it.
I forgot about the headphones. That's okay. Hi, everybody. We are here with our 2025 podcast season. We're really excited. This next episode is going to be about how dancers can find their aesthetic in dance. We're going to talk about the journey that a dancer goes through. And many of us have different phases. We're experiencing many different phases in our dance life and our journey. So we have a few fun points that we're going to talk about today.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited, Val, because this is something that even though however many years that we are in belly dance and we are in the world of belly dance, there's always something new to learn. And there's always an evolution happening within our art form and our dance form. And it's crazy because when I started, belly dance was so different to what it is today. And I'm sure you've had that similar experience, that you've seen it grow and evolve throughout the world.
Yeah, and change is the only constant in life, right? So the art continue changing, but we also continue changing, right? So all of that is going to be affecting the way we project ourselves in the dance, and how our aesthetics also continue evolving with time. So I'm really excited because I think we also want to talk about, how can you develop your own style as a dancer that goes beyond those important influences like your teachers, your mentors, and the industry norms.
Yes, 100%. I think that those are questions we hear a lot of. How can we step out of the teacher's shadow? Or how can we, after we learn technique from a teacher, how do we get out of their body and into our own body? And it's a process that I know personally I've gone through. And I'm still in it. I'm not perfect at it at all, but it's something that I'm excited to share.
It's a process.
It's a process.
It's a constant process, a constant evolution. Just like getting to know yourself. Like there's not a final answer to that. You're constantly through experiences getting more information about yourself. And I think in this process of finding your authenticity, right? In the dance, you gotta learn also how do you filter all this information that you get through your journey.
Yeah, for sure. Let's get into one of those first questions that we have for each other. What does finding your aesthetic feel like? I want to start there.
Okay, I love it.
What does it feel like?
For me, finding your aesthetic, when I think about aesthetics, I think about the form, the way that I'm gonna project a certain type of beauty norms that I'm gonna use for the construction of my branding as a dancer, right? How do I want people to perceive myself as a dancer? And it's a huge umbrella, right? Because once we enter to the professional field, and also when we're working in an artistic field, right? I'm going to talk about my case. Like I consider myself a professional dancer that works in the commercial field, but I'm also an artist. And I try to connect those two words. So my artistic voice most of the time is going to give me the information that I'm going to use for the personal branding of my dance. And I think it's a beautiful, fun, slow journey. That takes some time for you to figure it out. When I do my coaching with my dancers, one of the first exercises that I do with them is to have them write down the movements that they feel more comfortable and that they like the most. So aesthetics even come in the movement language that you pick for yourself as a dancer. What are the costumes that fit better on you, that you feel more comfortable? What are the colors that, you feel good? What is the type of music also that you feel you shine the most or resonates the more with you? So I think it's about, when we think about aesthetics, is finding those things that work for you, mostly on the outside, on the way people are going to be appreciating visually what you're offering.
That's very important. And I'm going to add to that. For me, aesthetics has to do with trial and error, because I know for me personally, I love so many types of aesthetics, and I like to try a lot of different things. But sometimes it's easier said than done, right? Because it's easy to like something and think that aesthetic is complete when it might be missing some sort of element, right? And you don't know unless you film yourself or unless you perform it, watch your performance, and then analyze it after and maybe repeat it again. I feel like aesthetics is like you said, a very slow and arduous journey. I say that just because it feels like that for me, but it might not be. It might be really easy for some people to find an aesthetic that they like and then stick with it for a while. Like a lot of dancers love to redo the 1950s and 60s belly dance aesthetics. And I think that is beautiful. But then when do you draw the line when it's yours and when it's not yours?
Yeah, when you're following a trend. And like, I like that you mentioned that example, because our dear friend Tiffany Madera, Hanan, she has always kept this very vibrant color aesthetics in her entire career. Like her colors are red and pink, and she likes dots, and like every performance that she had or every project, I recognize it because of the colors. Like, and it's interesting because some people feel very attached, certain artists, to a certain aesthetic that they keep alive in their dance career. And then there's also dancers that can be very playful, and they can be kind of like working on different aesthetics when it comes to movement, costumes all the time. So you see them go in a constant evolution with it.
Right. I think also for aesthetics, we really only see it after a while, when you have a collection of photos or videos
that you can put there all together and lay it out.
Exactly.
Yes.
It's in college, in visual arts college, when I was studying painting, what we would do is, as we were recognizing our own personality in our own art at the time, we would put all of our paintings up on the wall, and that is, as a collective, you see your work, everything at once, and then you can tell what is weaving in with each other, what elements are parallel, what other elements are clashing, what makes sense, what doesn't make sense. So for a dancer, as we move on, one of the tips to find your aesthetic is to trial and error performances with costumes, with movements that you repeat, that you like, right? And also, and also put them. Maybe make like a little party for yourself and play them all at once, one after the other, and write those notes down.
That's an excellent advice for self-discovery. Because if you think about your dance journey, especially dancers, sometimes we get to be very critical. We do a one performance that we're not satisfied, and then suddenly we're like,
We're done.
we're terrible dancers. And sometimes you gotta go back to those past performances, just like you're saying, like the trial and error. And in that analysis, you're gonna see, okay, I'm very attached to these movements. I'm very attached to this aesthetic. And it seems like, and you could see how your voice and your style, it's developing. In Dream Camp, we did an exercise with Aziza that she posted some videos of her performing like 20 years ago. And it was so beautiful because a lot of her movements have been with her for a long time.
And did she realize that? Did she say anything about that?
We just mentioned it like between us, but I don't remember her mentioning that. But I remember watching it and being like, wow, this circle, she keeps doing it and it has the same level of excitement.
Oh, that's so special to see that. Yeah, I wonder what she thinks. When was, let me ask you this question, because your aesthetic is very particular to you, and I know you've been developing yours for a long time, and you're very conscious about every performance that you create. When was that pivotal moment that you felt that you were truly yourself in your aesthetic?
I'm going to give you an exact date.
Oh, wow. Okay.
2009. I think it was May 2009. There was a dance festival in Puerto Rico called Sharkiyat. And I was already preparing to compete in the Miami Bellions convention back then. And I prepared this solo because we had this huge festival in Puerto Rico that was, I think, Bojenka, Jilina, and Mohammed Shaheen. So, and we were gonna perform in one of the most important theaters in the island, in San Juan, which was my dream to perform there. So I spent a lot of time preparing for that performance because I felt it was it was an important platform, but it was like my own graduation. Like I was allowing myself to finally say, okay, you're ready to the next step. Because I have always been very demanding on myself. And even though I have already been performing for 10 years, I was like, I never felt I was good enough. And in that performance, I wanted to create a performance that I know this happens to a lot of us, that we're like, I need to have a piece where I actually feel good with it, like I have accomplished everything. And I work super hard. I wanted it to showcase a piece where, because I started dancing so young, I was already like 22. Like I wanted it to look like I was stepping into womanhood. And I did wanted it to have like my Latina flavor, my Caribbean flavor, but at the same time, I wanted it to showcase, the years of dancing that I've been putting into my body. So my intention was to create a complex choreography. And I rehearsed it so much. I planned it so well. I love the song. I still hear the song today. And I get super excited. And
what song was it?
It was from, it's a oldie. So I think it's from, I forgot the composer right now.
You can hear it in your head, buddy.
I can hear it in my head, yeah. And I felt so good doing it that it was one of those moments where you actually black out on stage because you're so connected and so inspired. And I felt so good about it. And after I finished, Jelena told me that was very good. And then I saw Mohammed Shaheen, and then he told me, Valerick, that was very good. And I told him, really? And then he told me, if you don't believe it, nobody's going to believe it. me say,
sound advice.
accept like you were, and that was a moment that I was like, I had that validation from an Egyptian teacher, and then that really, like when he said that to me, I was like, yeah, I work for this, and like I really felt that I didn't look like anyone. When I saw the video, I'm like, this is me. This is the aesthetic that I've been working and building.
When you saw the video after.
When I saw the video after.
Yeah, I think that's just one of the biggest secrets to finding that aesthetic and that personality within you is to just watch those videos. The good and the bad ones.
Watch it. And I used to rehearse, and I would do I would say, okay, I'm going to rehearse. I would record myself, do the entire routine for 6 minutes, watch the entire video again, and then do it again. And again, and again, and again. Like I always say, like I don't like to be in the mirror at the same time. Like I need to record myself and be in my performing aspect, and then I'll go back and sit down in a critical mindset, but not doing both at the same time.
Yeah, I find that really difficult from my own. I find that really difficult from my own process to do that because I'm very free floaty and I'm very emotional when I do my performances and the work that I do. So I'll listen to the music and I'll really vibe with the music, but every time it's different. I'm such an improv dancer that it's very hard for me to get to that state of analyzing the videos, and like I give the advice and I do it with my students and my soloists and I do well with them. And then when it comes to me, it's like you said, I don't feel like it's ever enough. And then I watch it and I'm like, why did I do this? Or man, that was amazing. I have a double-edged sword situation in my head. So it's really funny, but I know my personality very well. That's something that I know myself very well. And
that you feel that gives you insecurities rather than...
It secures me that I know myself well.
No, but I'm saying when you're saying about getting into a critical mind while you're rehearsing, you feel it's not something that works for you because you start getting so critical about what you're doing and you don't flow that well.
I feel like I will come to, it's an anticipation anxiety. So I feel like I'm going to get to a place where I'm being too critical and overthinking, and then I end up not doing it. Even though I know it's good to do it, I know that it's good, but I'm still working on that. Like that's something that I have not found my aesthetic. I know I have a particular element.
You do have an aesthetic.
Okay, let me rephrase that a little bit. I feel like I have certain elements within an aesthetic that is not completely developed. And I get that for my personality, it's never going to be completely developed because I like to change over time. I like that and I find it fun. I like surprises. So I will leave space for my life to feel surprised about what I do. So it's like I'm looking at myself outside of myself. Yeah. So that's why I say I know my personality well enough to say that I like surprises and I don't get anxious about that. And I find that that's the fun part about living life, and the fun part about being a dancer is that I can do that. Although I will say that for free form people like me, if you are in a space that is constricting and you're working with an environment that is constricting, that's very damaging to my type of personality that might resonate with a lot of other people that are out there. So, which kind of leads me to the next point of when admiration becomes imitation and the influence of the teachers and the mentors that we have in our dance career, in our dance journey, I should say, because they are a very important part of the journey. They're not the destination, but they are definitely, you have to start somewhere. You have to learn somewhere.
That's important to say. They're not a destination.
Yes, the teachers, the mentors that we have, they're not a destination. They are just part of the journey, that stepping stone to learning, because in the art of Raksharki, there's a lot of evolution there's a lot of styles. There's a lot of context that we have to understand in terms of history. So maybe we have one teacher, maybe we have many, but the point here is that when do we start to come out of that shell from the learning chrysalis? Like for you're a butterfly, or you're about to become a butterfly, but you're still in the chrysalis and you're being cocooned by the teacher and the mentor that you have. And when is that time to feel like you're ready to sprout and open up your wings? You know? Did you ever have that experience?
That's an important step.
Yeah.
Yeah. Many times.
Yes, it doesn't just happen once, right? It happens a few times.
It doesn't happen once. It happens a few times. I think it's important to recognize teaching patterns. Like, I was blessed enough that my first teacher, Sandra Barrera, Zaina, I love you. She's like a big sister for me, like a big mama. Like, imagine how strong is our relationship that every time, oh my God, I'm gonna cry. Ooh. Every time my mom sees her, she says, thank you. Okay, let's take a moment. But my first teacher always told me, I want you to develop your own style. So I was a teacher. I had a first teacher that set the bar so high of what mentoring and teaching was that I was not able to feel comfortable in any other environment where they wanted it to like lock me in or tighten me up. Okay.
Lucky
in
you.
In any way. Exactly.
Lucky you. That is a rare thing.
It was a rare thing. And she was a person that even told my mom, she was so giving. I was not able to fulfill my dreams as a dancer, but I want to fulfill them through her. And I want her to do it because she has everything to do it. So I had a teacher that really believed a lot in me. And this is something that I try to pass to my future generations. And I remember her always saying, like, I want her to be better than me. Like, she never saw me as a threat, and she was like, I was her little project. And that her relationship was like that for a long time. But it got to a moment where I had to actually go for other teachers. And that is always painful for the main teacher because it's like your baby is gotta go for other spaces. And like the teachers, put a lot of maternity love also on our students. And sometimes we gotta recognize that they are gonna be able to fly. And I guess that through your dance journey, you're also gonna be going into different environments, situations, companies, industries, where sometimes you're gonna be under the direction of someone, right? Either it is a brand, a corporation, and that's where the situation sometimes when, how do you manage your authenticity at the same time that you're under a label, right? It can get tricky, right? So you gotta find places, people, circumstances where you actually feel comfortable and where you don't feel guilty about being yourself, right?
100%.
And I think that's the thing about understanding that the teacher is going to be an influence on you, right? Mm-hmm. But they're not your owners.
Yes. And it's okay. They're not.
It's a lot. Yeah.
It's a lot.
Okay.
It's dense, but we definitely know that out there's a lot of situations that have happened. We've heard them. So this is just a topic that you and I wanted to just share because we think it's important to understand that everybody has the permission to get out of a space where they're not comfortable in. And it's like any relationship. Sometimes you just have to break up with that person, and breakups can be messy. So
they don't have to be messy, but they can get messy.
They don't
and
have
that's
to.
fine too. That's okay.
Yes, and that's okay. And sometimes we don't know how to navigate those. So where do we start there? Because
I want to start with this.
yeah,
Because our dance is something that we also feel very emotional about it. It's our passion. So the person that we become when we're dancers, we're very passionate about it. We dedicate our lives, we dedicate a lot of time. And that's why also these relationships, when we're having a dance breakup, it feels like like a boyfriend, or like it feels very emotional. And sometimes you gotta kind of like realize, okay, I'm feeling emotional because this is important for me. And understanding that as a first starting point, it could help you also measure that, the level of drama sometimes has to do with how emotional you feel about it. But at the end, when you think about it, it's very simple. I don't feel comfortable in here. I don't feel like I can grow more than here. And that's it. You step out.
yeah.
In any other job that you have, you are excited to send the quitting letter, and you just like, you don't suffer it. Right?
I think there's a few signs to note that when you are feeling like that is going to be part of the journey sooner. I think one of those signs is when you feel like you're not growing, that you feel like you're in the same place and it's been a while and you're dancing the same thing, you're doing the same movements. You don't feel like there's an excitement, that it's something that you are repeating and repeating and repeating, and then you wonder why, what is happening. It could be the environment that you're in. That's one of the signs that could affect you. Another sign could be that you just don't feel like you can be yourself, do the type of dances that you want to, or maybe share something with your teacher that you want to do, but you find that it might be like a dumb question to ask him or her. That is a sign to start stepping out of that shadow of that person. What are some other micro signs that you think?
Craving to experiment and try new things and go to other spaces.
And not feeling like you're allowed to
and not
ask.
feeling you are supposed to go to, very typical example, to this event because it's from the competition, but you really want to study with that teacher, but you don't want to make your teacher upset. Like,
when you feel shame about your asking to go somewhere else, that is a big, big flag, a big red flag when you feel shame. And that's something that, like, I've gone through. I know you've probably gone through it too. You've probably listening have gone through it. If not, great. If you haven't gone through this, wonderful. No. But it's a big thing to know that that happens as a student and also as a professional. And how do you get out of that space in that situation is that you have to make those hard conversations happen. You have to make those decisions to have a grown-up conversation first with yourself and say, is this really what I want? And then number two, with the person that you might have that block with, right?
yeah, because like if let's talk about from the other side, right? If my students want to go to Alexandra's class, right? I can't receive them back here and be like, I saw you at Alexandra's class, you cheated on me. Like I don't even like those passive microaggression type of things.
Yeah.
Usually what I do, if I notice that they went to another place, I celebrate them. Oh, I'm so happy you went to take classes with this teacher. Did you feel good? and sometimes even students are like extra loyal that they come to you to apologize, and I'm like, you don't need to apologize. I want you to explore. But it's very important, right, for dancers out there that either if they are going to a studio, right, or a teacher, to understand that they're clients. You are paying for a service. You take the service and that's it. If you want to pay for another teacher's service, you just do it and that's it. You are not obligated to only take classes or learn from a specific thing. Same thing if you're a teacher on a studio, definitely you are part of that team, right? So you want the studio to do good, because if the studio do good, we all do good. And it's this collective effort. But also you as an individual teacher, right? If you want to expand your audience and not necessarily depend completely on the studio, which I feel is something that I wouldn't advise to any person, you gotta find new places. You gotta probably start going to other events outside of the studio, and you shouldn't feel bad to do that. Mm-hmm. You get what I'm saying?
Absolutely, because that's something that happens with me. And my story is very, very common. My story is very common, where I worked for a studio, which was very fruitful. It was amazing. It gave a lot of opportunity to all of its teachers. That's where I learned how to teach. For a time, the owner was amazing. She really guided us to be good teachers. And then what happens was, and it really wasn't anything to do with us as teachers. That's why I say it's a common story of a studio owner getting too caught up in her own kind of desires and wishes and struggles,
because that's a difficult business to sustain.
Absolutely,
too.
It's very hard. And when we understood, which is why we felt so loyal to the studio and the brand, but then there came a time when the insecurities were too much, and there was the non-compete agreements were flying around, and we had to sign those. And at the beginning, we were absolutely okay with it. We're like, no, we love this brand. We love what we have. We're going to do it. We trust you. This is great. And then afterwards, after a while, when we didn't start feeling, and it wasn't just me. So when the teachers started feeling that there was no growth and there was no, we couldn't be ourselves and we couldn't practice the things that we have learned on a higher level. So for example, I studied art history and visual arts, and I was going to be an art director. I worked in a museum. I worked in a leadership position. And when it came to working at the studio and applying the things that I learned in the outside to help the studio get better, it was rejected. So the artistic and creative aesthetic that I was trying to build on my own continued to be rejected on a more passive level.
You didn't have that space. You couldn't use the studio as a space for you to develop certain artistic visions.
I could and I couldn't. It's a very convoluted situation. So there's no right or wrong here. There's no black and white. This is why mine is common, because there's a lot of things that got mixed in. Because I was able to do gallery shows. I was able to combine paint nights and dancing and gallery shows with belly dancing. And I was able to do a few things. But when it came to more creative leveling up of the actual studio and helping to develop marketing ideas to make the studio a better business, those were rejected. I could do my own things there. That was cool. But when it came to trying to give back to the studio that I really loved, that was rejected. So it was a time where it was like, okay, what are we going to do? You know? And then a lot of people kept asking, why don't you just open up your own studio? I kept saying, no, this was great. You know, I wasn't seeing it for what it was. And I think a lot of us weren't either until like just the bomb breakup happened.
And I think that because we have spoken about this, it's like when you're also under the direction of a company or a studio, you also get into a comfort zone where you like, okay, if the studio also is going to be doing the entire marketing and promoting all the classes, I don't have to do that much. Yeah, right? You start thinking about the business of the other person that you're in when you see them struggling.
Well, also when they ask for help.
Exactly.
And they did ask for help. And we tried, but there was always some sort of like, oh, you know, but there was a struggle like, no, you know what? I'm going to go back to doing what I wanted to do. And then we were left like, okay, none of our ideas are passing through and it's not happening. So why are we giving more? And we kept on giving more, and that leads to a burnout from everybody. So, and I say that as a common thing because I've heard it happen in other places.
In other continents.
In other continents, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it happens over a span of time. I was there for 15 years.
That's a lot of time.
15 years is a lot of time.
It's a lot of time. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the red flags from what I've learned after all this time is number one, learn to talk to yourself first before you have a difficult conversation with the other person, which I didn't know back then. That's something that I just wasn't practicing.
Yeah, it's intimidating too.
It's very intimidating. Yeah.
With the structures of power too, the power dynamics, when the teacher mentor become your boss, it's like...
Yeah. When it's almost like an idol, you know.
At the same time. Yeah, that's hardcore.
So, yeah, it's very hardcore. And you know how they say never meet your idols?
Yes.
Well,
that's one of those situations, yeah.
For belly dancers, don't die with your idols.
You don't need to die with
your
idols.
You don't need to die with your idols. What you have to do is remember why you started dancing in the first place.
And that they're humans too. Like,
and they are human.
Be complex, and they're not necessarily going to be perfect. And
bad things happen, you know, and sometimes it's okay. So that's a part of life. And sometimes we just have to work through that challenge.
And I think this is a valuable conversation about self-worth too, because it gets to a point, a lot of these businesses are very small businesses, right? Either if you're in a performing company or if you're part of a dance studio, it gets to a point where you have to evaluate your worth in the company. And if you're feeling that the company is actually valuing, does the company value the work that you're doing for them, right? And I think that a lot in these conversations, me that I've been on both sides too, like because I was a studio owner, I remember sometimes getting so stressed out. And when you have money noise and you're creating a project like this and you have a dance studio, you sometimes get into this heroine complex that you think that everybody like owes something to you because you have the space and everybody can have this happy place, but you're not happy because you're seeing the numbers. And like, you have to be very careful on projecting your insecurities and miseries to the people that are actually supporting you.
Absolutely.
Like it's good that you need to have your boundaries established, but you gotta be grateful for those people supporting you, because a dance studio is not a dance studio without the teacher. A dance company is not a dance company without their dancers. And at the end, that's the thing that, if you don't have us, if I don't have them, I don't have a business. Period.
Yeah, the type of leadership is very important.
Type of leadership is very important.
I think that leaders should really, if there are struggles in your business and there's money noise, like you said, and which is something that happened to the studio that I was at, that those people must have boundaries, because it came to a point where that person could not control how I don't want to, like, how can I say this? They could not control how sad they were. To us, that's what it looked like.
It's totally normal and human. Like, when people feel financially defeated, you lose yourself.
Right. Look, I know it's normal, but there's a point where that starts to trickle down to the students, and they feel it, and they felt it, because it trickled to the teachers who were working there, and then it trickled to the students, and then you saw it in the numbers. You see it in the numbers when that person is not grounded and that person is not leveled. So what happens with studio owners? What should you do in that case? Hire somebody else for that position until you feel better, until you are ready to come back and put yourself in that situation. So, like, whatever it costs, it's you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hire somebody else to be in that position in the meantime, temporarily, because that cannot affect the business, because negativity affects numbers.
And also, like, being open to listen to your people, even when they're giving you negative feedback about yourself. And I know it's hard, especially when you're like in hard moments, but that's why businesses are such an emotional training too, because you gotta learn how to, manage your emotions. And like, we put a lot of emotion in our businesses. We put our heart and soul. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah. We put our passion into starting the business, right? But we also have to put and that this could also apply to students too, because you put your passion into what you're starting. And then once you get that ball rolling and that aesthetic, within the dance that you have or within the company that you have, then you just start to, if you wanted to let it roll, then you have to start applying the structure of what happens. So you don't have to attach yourself so much. We talked about it in the previous podcast, where the brand is not you. The brand is just an aspect of you. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Mm-hmm. You have to make sure that everything is kind of like, okay, I have a little bit of me here, but I'm also going to have space for my personal life. Mm-hmm. I'm learning about this art form, and I'm going to put a little bit of myself in that art form, but I'm also going to have space for my other passions and desires in life. And that way, you don't have such a messy, if there's a problem, a messy problem to solve. Mm-hmm. So that is part of like the recognition step, and then the taking action step.
I want to ask you about your exit plan. Mm-hmm. And maybe you can give us ideas for people that are thinking that probably they're gonna exit soon a situationship in their dance journey. Like, how do we navigate, and how do we know, okay, this is the correct moment to leave this space, and how do we do it?
Yeah, exit plans are something that I don't think I've ever heard of belly dancers talk about. I don't think that is something that belly dancers talk about, or exit plans, but it's something in business that you should really stipulate, that is common. How are you going to leave? What's going to happen after you leave, even if you just started something? It's important to think about that and to have, because that way you feel a little more grounded and supported by yourself. At the end of the day, you have to support yourself, your actions and your personality. No one else. You should not feel you need validation from anybody else. So exit plans are something that's important. Yeah, I didn't have one. I thought I was going to be part of that company forever.
And what happened?
And what happened was that other person just kept pushing me to be there and to be a part of that I wasn't growing. And they kept thinking of themselves, and they were not listening, and they were not asking the questions to me to ask, okay, do you feel like you're being supported with this company? Do you feel, which is what I would do in that sense, as if something was happening in my business and I was starting to feel a tumble as a leader, and I had other employees or people that were working for me, first I have to ground myself and say, okay, is this trickling over to my peeps that I'm working with? If so, I need to ask them these questions. That wasn't given to me. So I had to force my way out, and it was not fun. It was one of those bad breakups. And it was
sorry. I know it sucks.
Yeah.
I had my bad breakups, but they were so bad that I was like, run through the door. Like,
it's either fight or
never look back. And I never look back.
It's either fight or flight.
Yeah.
And I don't like any of those two. Fight or flight doesn't work.
I will say that sometimes you're going to formulate the exit plan depending on how they're locking the door.
Gosh, you
know what I'm saying?
It really depends on the situation.
I'm going to give you an opportunity, right? Because, for example, with one of the companies, I was like, well, I am feeling this way. I put my feelings under the table. And I didn't felt like the boss really care about how I felt. Like, didn't felt like a warm conversation.
It's a very common thing.
And like, okay, I was like, well, my perception of her reaction was like, okay, she just doesn't care about my feelings. So I'm just gonna send my quitting letter and that's it. Like, I didn't have to think too much about it. I was actually, at one point, I was fired. I've never been fired. I got fired from one dance studio because they told me that I was like really focused on working on myself.
Which is actually a good thing.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, okay, this is not the place for me. And then like the studio couldn't also pay for me. The studio was struggling. And I've never felt so happy to get fired.
Wow, this was a good experience.
I was like, oh, I didn't have to exit. Like, I was like, oh, okay. I'm like, yeah, you're working a lot on yourself. I think the company is not your priority. And at the time, I remember, at the time I remember listening to the speech and thinking like, I moved from another country to fulfill my dance journey and career. Like, I've been studying this since I am 13 years old.
Mm-hmm. Like, and they weren't your mentor. So it was easier for you to be like, okay, cool. Yeah, that person wasn't.
They were business mentors for me.
Oh, okay.
When it comes to event production.
Okay.
Okay. So they really, like, I learned a lot about business there, and I wouldn't be myself if it wasn't for that journey that I went through. So I do give them credit for that. But at the same time, their business training was so good that I knew that I wouldn't grow with them.
Honestly, that's the same thing with me. I learned so much in the brand and the company that I was in, which I do give them a lot of really good credit. And yeah, they were very supportive. But at the same time, it's just, you know, that exit. Like there's a point in time where things end.
They end, and
It's
everything
life.
has a season in life.
Yeah.
Like, we cannot feel guilty because
Right.
I know that things are going wrong when they start with the loyalty speech. Loyalty
That's
is
your
very
favorite word.
important for me. You gotta be loyal to me. And like the loyalty thing, sometimes I feel like could be a manipulation strategy. Like, I'm not a big fan when I hear, and it's something that I learned already, that if I'm working with somebody and either I'm working under their direction and they go with that loyalty speech, I'm out the door. Like, I'm like, this is not a place for me. Because we all put effort on creating projects and ideas, but yeah, it gets to a point where it's a red flag for me, right? Like, if loyalty means that I have to jeopardize my authenticity, which is the main thing, to belong to your vision and project, then I don't want to be part of it.
Yes. And let's not confuse business ethics with manipulation and words like loyalty. Because there are of course, we need to be ethical in the business transactions that, you know, we do if you are a professional belly dancer. Or if you're just a student, there are still ethics that we have to, you know, that we kind of have to be guided by. When you are, well, a student has a lot more freedom, of course, because they're doing this for fun. But let's say there's a teacher that puts that on you, on your head, that, okay, you got to be loyal to me. You got to only take with me. Or they never say this directly, but it's an indirect assumption that you are only going to stick with them. That is a red flag. That is a red flag, because everybody learns differently and they learn new things with different teachers. That's why we
you need to explore.
And that's why we need to explore. And that's part of growing in your aesthetic. And one of the things we were talking about was what to do with the exit plan, right? What to keep in mind and what to have.
Yeah, and I want to know, like, in your case, how that exit help you to kind of like rebirth or rebrand who you are as a dancer now and your authenticity. Because when you're under certain type of teaching styles, leaderships, right, you get trimmed, right, to be either a copy of a teacher or an instructor or a dancer too. That happens a lot. But in your journey, how do you felt this exit created a positive impact on your authenticity as a dancer?
Yeah, it's a very good question, because there was definitely a rebirth after I left. And it was something I wasn't completely expecting for me to have, but I really felt it. I really, really felt it. And it was exciting. So, what were my steps?
Your exit and your authenticity. How did that help you to, because now you are out of the company, so you don't have that.
Where was that pivotal moment that I felt that I started becoming more authentic? Is what you mean?
Como tú te sentiste once you get out of that space.
Yeah.
Como tú te tienes que how do you redefine yourself after that exit?
Yeah. So after coming out of that, the redefinition was trial and error, which I had fun with. I had a lot of open space to explore, okay, now I'm going to resurface this idea that I had and I'm going to do it my way. And it's a very exciting feeling to be there to say to myself, I trust you because you are going to do it your way and you're going to learn with no push or rejection from anybody else. You don't need to feel validated because when you work for a company, there is a certain criteria that you need to meet so that the company can function, which is fine. It's normal. It is how it is. But when you are on your own, the entrepreneurial switch just popped on for me. And I was able to be like, okay, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that with I still had always in mind the ethics behind, okay, this person is still close in the vicinity of my town, but I am going to make sure that I'm still keeping my boundaries from their classes and my classes. And I'm still going to keep that space for me to feel comfortable, and I was able to get out of that. So my exit plan was, I'm going to get better at the classes and the way that I teach. I'm going to teach in my own way, still with the knowledge that I gained from working there because it was very valuable, very, very valuable and really good. And, but I'm going to have fun doing it my way. So I still had a plan. I still had in me to tell myself, I trust you, girl. You are going to do better. So the positive talking and the positive speeches I gave myself were a huge, huge part of the growth that I had afterwards.
I feel that sometimes for dancers, when they are thinking about their exit plan, and I'm talking about one of my students recently quit a performing company in another country. And at the beginning, she was very afraid because she really felt like, oh, this is going to be something that could damage my career because this company has a monopoly of like the restaurant business and I'm not going to get hired. And she was afraid. She was afraid that I know for a lot of people, they feel like that. But in your case, like, how do you manage that fear? And if you could share also a breakthrough moment, that something that you did on your own, that you were like, oh my God, I'm capable to do this. I'm capable to be on my own. Like, I enjoy that I can do now my classes and design them however I want. What do you feel that was a moment that you were like, ah?
So the fears that I had coming out of that were dismantled because I had a community and a support from my friends and family to tell me that none of what you are doing is against the law.
Right? Like, we need that reality check.
We do. We need a reality check from outside perspective. And a lot of our very close people were telling us, why do you keep supporting this person who continues to tell you not to do this, which is all not against the law? That helped me tremendously to ground myself and to get over the emotional part of like, oh, but this. And then once they grounded me and once I grounded myself with those thoughts, I was able to let go of the emotional part. So the emotional part comes when you are not seeing it for what it actually is. And that is huge. You have to learn how to be stoic with the situation. And that is when you start to feel that you are able to exit. And then I was fine. I was absolutely fine. I didn't worry about anything else. I didn't look back. And that's a big thing. Once you ground yourself, once you have a support system that helps you ground, you can take off and unhinge and take off all of the things that are emotional baggage and clinging on emotionally, and then look at it for what it is and then move forward, because that's the only way that you're able to open yourself up to grow. So that was part of my exit plan. And I just remember afterwards, this took a bit of months. This wasn't as easy as I say. This took time. And it's almost like you're mourning part of your past, and you need that time to discard everything that you have put on top of your shoulders so that you can walk forward with lighter weight on your shoulders. So it's a psychological process and an actionable process, because then there came a time where I started to create these classes that now I called mindful belly dance. And that was a type of class that I don't think that brand would ever be open to doing at all, because it is a complementary class to technique. And it's a class where it is a lot of mindful movement. I'm just your guide, and we go through belly dance. It's a full belly dance class, but it's a lot more of like exploration of movement, and almost
more holistic too.
More holistic, absolutely. And that would have been something that brand wouldn't have been like, what is this, Alexandra? Like, this is too woo-woo. And then I would have been like, no, you don't understand. This is amazing. Blah, 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 blah. I would have been so excited about it, and it would have just been rejected. I'm assuming that, but I can kind of assume that because of the experience that I had. So I feel like that is one of the ways to transition from one phase to the other, is to have a support around you, ground yourself with stoicism, and then start to see or even if you can't see the situation for what it is, ask someone outside of your network, outside of the world that you're in, to be like, okay, tell them your situation, and then ask them, how do you see this situation from what I'm describing it as?
That's very useful. Yeah. I use that. My best friend, it's a man in the Bitcoin business. So it was very interesting to ask him for advices, because he just gave me a very critical and logic, sometimes strategy about things that I'm like, oh, it's so simple. Like, this doesn't need to be so dramatic. But let's talk about building something that's yours, right? Once you get out of that umbrella of either a teacher, a company, or whatever, that you have that major influence, how do you go on your own? How do you start understanding what is your own style, branding your own personal dance career journey, and very important, how do I find other spaces where I feel I can actually bloom? What do you have to say about it?
What do you have to say about it?
Well, I think that's the most fun part, because if you're part of a very constrictive environment, then you go out and then you have like this sense of like freedom and playfulness. And in my case, every time that I have done that, it really fulfills my creativity. Then I realize like I can't be in these constructive places too. And then in my case, I am a solo artist by definition. I do very well doing collaborations with people, but I'm still like, I still have to do certain work on my own. But I think it's beautiful because you get the opportunity to explore with your creativity in different ways. Either it's designing your class, either it's like designing a solo that you probably felt that it was a little edgy, or controversial to present it in your studio because it didn't go with the brand and now you're able to do it. For me, it was very interesting because when I left this studio, I did have an interest to tapping into sexuality and dance.
I remember that. Yeah.
And
I was around, but like
I was
from far.
I was studying burlesque on my own and like really seeing the intersections about belly dance and burlesque. And I was fascinated about, you know, the perception of society of showgirls. And I started to do burlesque classes. I started to do burlesque events. And I actually started to work with a sexual educator. And I did that. And next thing you know, the person that I was working with wrote this long message on Facebook to shame that I was bringing belly dance. God. And like people don't understand the difference between burlesque and whatever. And then...
But you were trying to educate. You were trying to learn and then educate.
Freaking feminist, hardcore, like program that I was just sharing, which is something that I like to do a lot. Like everything that I learn, I share it. I share my knowledge. And it was very interesting because the more they shamed me, the more successful I was being.
I did
very good with those projects. Financially, they allow me also to connect with other artists. And artistically, some of my best performances were in that year because I was actually nurturing myself with a lot of historic information. And this is my golden era period where I was experimenting more with golden era style. And it was precisely because I was like checking into the 1920s burlesque scene. And I was going to a lot of burlesque shows here, watching a lot of classical burlesque, like copying and absorbing that mannerism and feminist movements. And
you were learning, you were studying, and you were getting to a place where you could find education behind what you were getting at. Whereas sometimes people see sex and they're like, no.
And then I realized because at some point in that studio, I said that to become a better dancer, you gotta use your vagina. I said the vagina word, okay? And they were like, the V word. They were like, that's not too professional. You shouldn't be using that word because I understand like where you're coming from and why you're saying it, but people can perceive it. I mean, she had a logic behind her argument. But the thing is that I didn't want to be perceived like that saint, damisela,
Virgin
Mary teacher. I actually wanted to use the dance to talk about those taboos and like use the space of the class so the thing is that once I did that and then I allow myself to go a little bit more risky and go a little bit more hardcore, I realized that there were other people fascinated, like Alia Mohammed doing that, Princess Farhana doing that. And then it was like a confirmation that I had so much to give that I didn't have the space there to do it.
Mm-hmm. Now, what if we don't have such a risky desire or a passion?
That's good too.
Which is fine because some people, you know, to find their aesthetic after you come out of certain closed places, it doesn't always have to be flashy.
Never.
But it can be. And if it is, then just try it. Have a sense of like education behind it, of course. I mean, I'm a big advocate for that, and I know you are too. We don't we don't just do things because, or we don't just share things because we just want to. We always share things because there's a certain message that can hopefully resonate with somebody else and can help them pass through easier a situation and not have to go through the hard parts that we went through.
Yeah.
So
that possibilities are endless too when it comes to work with your authenticity and like defining your aesthetics. Like,
yeah,
there's so much room to play, and it's okay to play.
Oh, it's absolutely necessary to play. Like me with my mindful belly dance and me having that. So for me, that authenticity started coming out with the mindful belly dance classes because I closed the curtains. There were no mirrors. There's a bunch of candles. I make tea, but we learn about music. We learn about different types of instruments in the Arabic world, and we dance to them. And then we learn how to connect with our bodies on a deeper level and however they want to, but it's so much more personalized that those types of like classes are more like me and my aesthetic and my personality. They're more lo-fi, but they're definitely like really fun for me to do. So trial and error, right? Just do it. Don't worry about others' opinions if it's like what they think is right or wrong. I think that's a red flag when people start to police you and to whether it's when they start to police you in your face or subtly. Those are both the subtle ones.
Are the worst
ones. Jeez. But I think that your evolution has endless possibilities.
And coming back to the reason why we dance, we want to encourage our dancers or whoever is listening to us to do a little journaling exercises with us. Because this dance is so much more than a person, a company. It's a beautiful art form. And how about now, as a final exercise or a belly dance stories homework?
I like this, a belly dance stories homework.
You take some time to write a love letter to the dance, where you actually pour your emotions and use this as a reminder of the reason why you actually dance. Why do you think, Alex, this writing exercise is good and nutritious?
Oh, yes. Okay, this writing exercise is, I'm going to use your words, good and nutritious and juicy and nurturing for the soul, because writing has a way to connect you writing has a way to spiritually connect you with your mind and your body. There's magic that happens when you journal. There's magic that happens when you write a letter. And to write a letter to yourself or to write a letter to the dance itself, to the art form, helps remind us of who we are, who we were, and who we want to be. It's like that saying that you should make only 2 people in your life happy, which is your 8-year-old self and your 80-year-old self. And if you do happen to write that letter, audience out there, and you want to send it to us, it can be anonymous. You can have your name on it. You can send it to us, and we will read them out loud in one of our podcasts.
So send it to us at bellionstories@gmail.com. And we hope to see you in our next episode.
Yes, we hope you enjoyed this episode, and we will see you soon.